Editing your wedding photos can sometimes be quite difficult, especially if you've shot in a challenging lighting environment. Colour casts can easily appear, and sometimes they're very difficult to remove in post. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving you 3 wedding editing tips to hopefully remove all colour casts and make your photos look absolutely spectacular in Lightroom. And I'm going to start right now. Now the first one is actually going to be using the white balance tool, and it's probably the most powerful tool that we've got to remove colour casts from our photo. So let's take this image here. This is going to be the image we're going to be using in reference of this video. Let's go ahead and open up the basics panel. Now, this is the white balance. We actually shot this on auto white balance, but the light was very warm, very yellow. So I've tried to fix that with the colour grading panel, but it just hasn't worked in this photo. So what can we do to fix that? Well, luckily, wedding dresses are white, or they're neutral, which is really helpful when we want to go ahead and actually change the white balance of our image. So all you need to do is go to this little button here. This is called our white balance selector. And all you'll need to do is find something with a neutral hue. But you might be asking, well, what's a neutral hue? Well, basically something that doesn't contain any colour. And luckily, most wedding dresses are white, and white doesn't contain any colour. So that's going to be super helpful. It's a great reference point for Lightroom to choose to change the white balance. So we're going to go ahead, hover over something with a fairly neutral hue. The pillow in the background is a great example. But another way to check, a double check as it were, is have a look at the targeted picker, and you'll see some percentage numbers at the bottom. You've got a red, green and blue percentage value. And these percentage values referring to how much of red, green and blue are appearing in that specific swatch. So in this example, we've got 95.2% red, 91.8% green and 89.3% blue. Now what you want is to have these numbers within 10% of each other. That will mean that we've pretty much got a fairly neutral hue within our photo. If the numbers are further off, then I wouldn't recommend using it. But in this specific example, I would say that's a little bit closer. I think we can get a little bit better. If we go down a little bit, let's go for about here. 95, 91 and 89. They're really close. And then all you need to do is go ahead and click. And immediately, that is pretty much fixed the image. Now I would say there's probably a little bit too much green in here, but all we need to do now is to make some very subtle changes. So for example, if we go to the green here, we can go ahead and just fix that. And I would say probably around here, I would say now works quite nice. So a very subtle change we had to make, but Lightroom has done a lot of the work for us, which has worked really nice. But I still think that wedding dress has still got a little bit too much yellow in it. So now what we can do is exit out of the basics panel and now drop down to color grading. Now color grading is a really helpful tool. If you would like to know more, go ahead and watch this masterclass tutorial that I've made. But basically in this video, what we want to do is to find the indirect color of the color cast that's causing the issue. So in this example, I would say yellow. Now already in the highlights, we've added in yellow. So the first thing we want to do is go to our saturation here and simply remove that color. But I would still say there's a little bit of yellow, especially in those highlights there. So what we want to do is to add in the indirect color of that color cast, or the opposite color on the color wheel. Now luckily we've got a nice color wheel here. So for example, let's say we've got a green color cast. What we want to do is add in magenta, or if you've got a blue color cast, add in yellow. Again, green color cast, add in magenta, red color cast, add in cyan. Basically the opposite color on the color wheel. So in this example, let's say we think there's too much yellow. What we can do is go ahead, whip that around to blue and add in a very small amount of blue, maybe 5 to 10%. And hopefully that will fix the color cast. But again, if that still hasn't worked, there's one more trick we can do. And it's actually using masks. And it doesn't work all the time, so this is why I've left it at the last, but it can be really helpful in certain instances. So let's go ahead and let's say that there's a very, very strong color cast over all of the highlights in the wedding dress. So what we're going to do is go over to our masking panel, and what we're going to do is select the highlights. So create new mask, and we're going to go down to where you can see luminance range. Select luminance range and simply go ahead and click on anything that's bright. Now, what it will do is it will open up this luminance range mask. What you want to do is make sure all of the highlights are selected. We'll go for something like so. The red is the overlay in this example, although of course you can always change it. So for example, we want to change it to green, makes it a little bit more obvious for this tutorial. So you want to make sure all of the highlights are selected, so all of the wedding dress is selected like so. And I think that's a pretty good job. Then all you will need to do to remove an ugly color cast is simply go all the way down to where you can see it says saturation and simply drop the saturation. Dropping the saturation will drop all colours from your photo, and it works really nice to remove ugly colour casts. So for example, we could drop it down to -30. Now the problem with this is the luminance range will select everything else with a highlight tone to it, and you might not necessarily want to do that. So this one's a little bit fiddly. So for example, it selected the skin tones here, it selected the background, and we don't necessarily want that. So what we can do to tidy this up a little bit is we can go to the subtract, so remove, and then simply go ahead and choose brush. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose a brush a little bit that big. I'm gonna go ahead and choose show overlay, and all you wanna do is simply brush out the bits that you don't want this mask to be impacting. So we'll go ahead, select most of the top part of this image here, do this. Again, the issue with this is it does take a little bit of time, and if you're editing, 40, 50 photos, you don't want to be doing this to every single one of your image, but it does really help removing those ugly color casts. So for example, if we go ahead and back out, now the wedding dress looks perfect. And if we compare it to the before and after image, we can see those three techniques have completely removed those ugly color casts and made the wedding dress look nice and white. And that's what's most important. And there we go. There are 3 ways that you can remove ugly color casts from your image inside Lightroom. Thank you to all of my YouTube members that are currently supporting the channel. If you guys want to support the channel and get some awesome perks, including free Lightroom presets like the ones that you can see on screen, make sure to go ahead to the link in the description. I've been James for Photo Fever, and I'll catch you guys next week.